Today on Rambling About Cars, we have a lot of debuts to get through here from the last couple weeks, and there's a lot of electric news to talk about. GMC Sierra EV, probably the biggest of the bunch, but we also got Celestiq from Cadillac, Rolls-royce Spectre. It's not all EV because there's a really sweet Porsche 911 that we're going to talk about, and a lot more. So without further ado, it is podcast time. I am Christopher Smith. And Mr. Chris Bruce is across the way. It's been a very, very long month for me, so I'm a little slap happy here this evening.
Yeah, so we'll hit it right off the top. As always, like, subscribe. We love all that stuff. Yes. But Smith will be taking a 2-week vacation coming up here. So
yes, I'll disappear for a little while, but I'll be back. Yep. I'll be back. In theory, I should be back. Yeah,
you will be back. If I have to do a seance, you will be back. But yeah,
just in time for Halloween. So yeah, this is the final podcast for me from South Dakota. So can't wait to get out of my little tiny room that was really cool, but is now just really depressing with white walls. So let's talk about some cool car stuff.
Let's do that. So let's start with the car that, as of we are speaking right now, it hasn't debuted yet. It debuts tomorrow evening, but
which will be yesterday evening for you. As you're listening,
it will be tomorrow for us. It'll be yesterday for you listeners. Exactly. Good catch there.
Time stuff, man.
But one of the nice things about being an automotive journalist is that we get to the stuff early sometimes. So let's stop beating around the bush. We are talking about the GMC Sierra EV. And I'll be popping some photos up of it here. And while I'm doing that, Smith, tell the folks a little bit about it.
Well, this is the 2024 GMC Sierra EV. Actually, this is the Sierra EV Denali Edition 1. This is going to be the first version of the all-electric Sierra pickup that you're going to be able to get. It's going to go on sale the early part of 2024. So,
right. So not
it has typical General Motors, a little bit of a time gap here between when we're seeing it debut and when it's going to be available. But yeah, first half or the early 2024 is what they're saying. It is a little pricey. I'm just going to say this right off the bat, $108,695. That includes the destination fee. But to clarify, this is going to be the flagship, their first, just like GMC did with the Hummer, their first edition. It's going to be all loaded up with all the bells and whistles. GMC does say that there will be a cheaper Sierra EV coming later, starting somewhere in the 50,000 range. So, I mean, that lines up pretty good with Lightning. What that trim level is going to be and when it will arrive, we still don't know. We do know GMC said the AT4 and the Sierra EV Elevation will come after Denali Edition 1. Those aren't going to be available until the 2025 model year, though. That could mean they show up later in 2024. It could mean early
2025.
In either, no matter how you look at it, it's going to be a little while before you see one of these on the road. But I mean, if you're familiar with the Silverado EV, I mean, this is the more extravagant sibling here. It's still the same unibody style, full size truck. It has the Ultium platform, obviously. The Ultium battery pack is integrated into the structure. Like the Silverado EV, it has the shorter, I think it's 5 feet 11 inch bed, but it has the mid gate in there that you can opens up the interior, and that expands it to 9 feet of floor space for cargo. And then there's the GMC Multi-Pro tailgate that folds down. All total, you can get just about 11 feet of floor space, which that's pretty darn good, I think. If you are hauling, especially, I mean, anybody that does contract work, carpentry, that sort of thing, where you're hauling large pieces of plywood or lumber, I think that's going to be terrifically useful. It's one of the features I love about the Silverado EV. I love it about the Sierra, although $108,000. Are you going to be dropping that down and throwing a kayak in the back? I don't know.
There's that. And also, I think you have to admit that this mid gate that we're looking at here, it is just like the Silverado EV, it comes in two forms. So the image that we're looking at now, it has everything down.
Yes.
There is, let me find the other image. So you can also have a rear window and kind of a bulkhead there as well, if you don't want to everything exposed. But still, I get the impression that this is kind of a sometimes thing. This is if you have something especially big. I can't imagine. I live in Northwestern Ohio. You currently live in South Dakota. There are many times of the year I wouldn't want to drive the truck around totally exposed like that.
Right. And that is a very good point, Bruce. And that's something worth pointing out. When we say, the mid-gate, you can open it up for extra cargo space. That means you're opening the cabin up to the elements. There is nothing behind you at that point but open cargo area. So, there is that factors in. But I mean, how many times do you run into something where, okay, I just need a little bit more space? I think it's a terrifically useful feature.
Right.
It would be neat to see. It's sort of like the old Avalanche was, right? So
right.
I would love to see that on other trucks. I think it's terrifically useful, but let's get around to the meat here. You don't care about the mid-gate quite so much. You care. Okay. So this is an electric GMC pickup truck. It's the second GMC electric pickup truck.
Second GM electric pickup truck, not GMC, or unless you've got some. Oh,
the GMC,
Hummer
the GMC Hummer. Yep, the GMC Hummer, and the GMC Hummer. Lots of power, lots of crab walking, right? Lots of going sideways. The GMC Sierra does have crab walk. It does have four-wheel steering. You can get it with the crab walk. Its power isn't quite up to Hummer EV standards, but it is more than the Silverado EV. You get 754 horsepower, 785 pound-feet of torque. It's a dual motor setup in there. Now, there's still quite a bit of information we don't know about. In the press release, GMC mentions that, okay, that's what you get when you go into the max power setting. So whether that power is available all the time or just in a certain mode for a certain amount of time, it's not really clear, but that is the maximum that you can get. That'll send the truck to 60 miles an hour, they say, in an estimated 4.5 seconds. So, I mean, I'm not a mathematician. We don't have any idea how much it weighs. But 754 horsepower and 0 to 60 in 4.5. I mean, it's a big truck, and it's an electric truck. So I mean, it's going to be heavy. It has a cargo capacity.
It's almost going to be certainly going to be a torque monster though, because that's the way these electric trucks have been.
Oh yeah. Oh, I mean 0 to 60 in 4.5. That's not slow in any concept. That's not slow.
No.
We do know it has a cargo capacity of 1,300 pounds. It can tow 9,500 pounds. It has GMC's Power Station Pro system. That provides 10.2 kilowatts of off-board power through 10 outlets, so you can take it to the job site, the campsite, run stuff. It can also be used to charge other EVs. It can also be used, GMC says, in emergencies to run essential functions, and I'm using air quotes, essential functions of a home for 21 days.
Whoa, okay. That's
why
I wonder what they mean by essential.
That's why I say it in quotes. And to be clear, that's not using their Power Station Pro system. That's hooking up the GMC Sierra EV once you have the necessary tools and the equipment and everything to plug it into your house.
Sure.
That's using the truck to run essential home equipment for 21 days. So
I get the impression the word essential is doing a lot of heavy lifting in that sentence.
Right. And of course, when you read the press release, I mean, they do have an asterisk there and they say, of course, this depends on what you have plugged in, what you're running, what the temperature is, whether Scorpio is in line with Aquarius.
Right. And I'm not discounting
that, but I mean,
I'm not discounting these systems. I just literally today wrote a story. Hyundai in the UK, they are using Ioniq 5s to power a hotel. Now, granted, it's a hotel, again, kind of in scare quotes. It's a cabin. it's a cabin for 2 people, but there's a kitchen and a bathroom and a bed. Like it works as a cabin. And then former Motor Oneer John Neff, he did a story for us about he's got an F-150 hybrid that he tows a trailer with, like a camper trailer, and he loves it because of the onboard generator.
The Pro Power on board. Yeah,
exactly. So no, these systems work. 21 days. I would be curious. That seems like a lot, but
I mean, essential. Hey, I suppose. I mean, I'm not gonna say anymore. I'm not gonna doubt it. They have it plugged in. Obviously, if you're running like 20 air conditioners and the TV, I mean, it's not gonna last. But yeah, I mean, essential. I mean, if you just need, if you need to run your well for water, keep the refrigerator running so the food doesn't go. I mean, anybody that's had to deal with an extended power outage, and I've had that a few times in my life. Mm-hmm. As long as you can keep that stuff going, man, the rest is cake. The rest is fine. You don't want to have to get rid of everything in your freezer. You don't want to have to try to figure out how to flush the commode, especially after 2 or 3 days of no power. So yeah, I think that's a pretty interesting number. But let's also talk about the interior, because I was a little surprised here. The Sierra EV's interior, I was expecting just to be, a little bit warmed up from the Silverado. It's actually quite different. They use the largest portrait touchscreen that GMC has ever offered. I'm looking at my stats here right now. 16.8 inch portrait center screen. It pretty much dominates the middle of the dash. And then there's another 11.8 inch driver display.
Mm-hmm. We're looking at that here if you're watching on YouTube.
Yep. And then there's an available heads-up display, multicolor heads-up display. So, I mean, you have things popping up everywhere in the interior. I mean, it's definitely different from what we saw on the Silverado. And, of course, being a Sierra Denali, it's a premium interior. They have wood, they have aluminum, stainless steel, higher quality materials. It's available with Super Cruise, Bose stereo. It's going to be a fairly luxurious machine.
Sure. And for $108,000, you'd want it to be, because that's a lot of money for a truck.
It is.
Like, you can't fight that one way or other. But they're packing this thing with features because they have to, because this is how you get people in the door, that you get them interested in this. Mm-hmm. And then, like you talked about, the AT4. Yep. And what's the other model? The Elevation.
Yep. Sierra EV AT4, Sierra EV Elevation will come later. Yep. They say they'll be for the 2025 model year. And again, we're talking about the flagship vehicle here, the Denali Edition 1. I mean, not even just Denali. This is Denali Edition 1, right? So the people that are anxious to get in on the newest, latest Sierra, I mean, that'll be the target market. And I mean, we mentioned the price. $108,695. That includes the destination charge. If this goes like the Silverado RST did, the Silverado EV RST, I can't remember exactly what that was for starting price. I know it wasn't quite that high, but reservations on that were filled up in, I think, like 12 minutes. We reported on. So, I mean, if it goes that direction, I mean, we've certainly seen there's demand out there for it. So.
Oh, totally.
And as you're listening to this right now, if you are like, man, I need me a GMC Sierra EV Denali Edition 1, you can go to gmc.com and make reservations right now. But
so I've got the Silverado EV, the fully optioned first edition. That is with the destination price. That would be $106,095.
So, I mean, it's all the same once you get up that high, right?
Yeah.
106, 108. But it might already be reserved. Everything might be reserved as you're listening to this. So you better go fast. But listen to us first before you go to gmc.com, because we have a lot more to talk about.
We do. So from one GM electric vehicle, let's talk about another GM electric vehicle. Let's talk about their flagship electric vehicle, and that would be the Cadillac Celestiq. And I know for a fact I'm going to call it Celestiq at some point as I talk about it, because that's the way whenever I look at this term, I feel like it should be Celestiq. It just sounds chic.
It feels right when you look at it, but nope, Celestiq.
Celestiq is the way they say it said.
I mean, when I first saw it, I was like, Celestiq? What the hell kind of a name is that? But no, Celestiq.
Yeah.
And we have the production model now that debuted, and holy crap, people, it kind of looks almost exactly like the concept, but we knew that was going to be the case.
It looks so close to the concept, you can almost just call it the concept.
Right.
To the point where if you're going to be looking at these images, it doesn't have door handles. Mm-hmm. You either pop the door from the key or inside. So the rear passengers have a console in between them. The front passengers have a console in between them. There's a button to pop open the door. There are no door handles.
Which, I mean, it's cool. I know there are people listening that are going to be like, well, what happens if there's no power? How does the door open? But I mean, it's an electric car. Yeah. In theory, there's always going to be power from somewhere, but I guess.
Well, also, we need to address the price. Cadillac says this starts north of $300,000. And so each one will be a custom made, essentially. A buyer goes to their Cadillac dealer, Cadillac hands them over to a concierge, and they work with that concierge and a designer to pick out the color and all the finishes and all of that of their vehicle. So that's why they don't have a hard, firm price for it, because depending on how a person, I don't know, you want... What's something really, really nice? You want wool from a specific island in Scotland, I guess. Theoretically, that's possible, but you got to be able to pay for it. So north of 300 grand is to start, and then the mind boggles where it ends.
And I know, because I can hear it right now. I can hear all of you ramblers. I can hear what you're thinking, and it's something along the lines of, what? Because a $300,000 Cadillac, but I'm going to stop you right there, because I'm behind this. I support this. I could be a little biased because I did grow up with an elegant classic, back in the heyday, 1960 Cadillac Series 62 convertible, at a point when Cadillac was really still considered one of the world's great luxury brands. And I think this is a pretty darn good step at trying to say, we're still here and we can still be that. No, not everybody is going to go buy this $300,000 plus Cadillac swoopy sportback sedan that I think looks really good. I love the way it looks. It's a hand built. It's going to be a hand built vehicle, right? I mean, you have the Ultium platform, but the rest of it, I mean, not like building an engine. Like the vehicle is hand built,
right? So it is being built at the GM Technical Center in Warren, Michigan. This is the first time a production vehicle has been assembled there. Historically, a lot of concepts and things like that have been made there. This is the first time a vehicle for consumers is being made there. And because of that, it's not really designed to be a factory. Cadillac or GM is putting $85 million into that facility. And to do that, and they put this in the press release, they can only build 6 simultaneously. So at any one time, they can only build 6 of these. So, one leaves and another one comes in, but there can never be more than 6 being built at one time because this facility is so small. So yeah, they're all being built by hand, which is pretty fascinating, especially for a Cadillac.
This is unlike anything I've seen from Cadillac in forever.
Right. They say they want the vehicle to reestablish the brand as the standard of the world. And for anyone who doesn't know, back in the 30s, maybe even into the 40s, that was Cadillac's motto. We are the standard of the world.
And they were. I mean,
they were. That was legitimately true. And they want the vehicle to put them back on that footing. And that, I gotta give him credit, is a ballsy as hell goal. And I want to see him do it, because I have honestly thought about this vehicle a lot. I wrote up this story. I've looked at our comments. You know, a lot of people are against it. And here's the issue. And to me, I'm going to kind of go on a little bit of a rant discussion here. And Smith, you can tell me if you agree, disagree, whatever at the end. So $300,000 plus is what this thing's going to cost. Cadillac's telling us about the powertrain. It has 600 horsepower, 640 pound-feet of torque. That gets it to 60 in 3.8 seconds. Here's the problem with that. For about $200, I believe it's $200 or $250,000, you can get a Lucid Air Sapphire with 1,200 horsepower. So you can get double the power for a good chunk less than the price. But I'm not quite done here, though.
Okay. You saw me about to speak. Please continue, good sir.
No. But here's the thing. If Cadillac can actually do what they're promising, if they can deliver a truly bespoke, truly hand-built, truly luxurious vehicle, then it doesn't matter. Because you think about the hand-built Cadillacs of old, the V16 and the Brougham, from the V16 from the 30s, the Brougham from the 50s specifically. Those vehicles, they were never the fastest in their class. They were never, the most fuel efficient or anything like that. They were the most luxurious cars in the world. And in order for this vehicle to do what Cadillac wants it to do, it has to put its money where its mouth is and truly make this the most luxurious car in the world. Because, like, you look at our commenters and stuff like that, who say, why would I pay $300,000+ for a Cadillac? And Cadillac has to show people.
Right.
I'm rooting for it, if I'm being totally honest. Like, put your money where your mouth is and do it. And I want to see you do it.
I'm totally with you. And you're right. The person that's going to buy this car, they don't give a rip about 1,200 horsepower.
Right.
When you park this next to the Lucid Air, not throwing shade or criticism at Lucid, this Cadillac stands out. It doesn't look like anything else on the road. You identify it immediately for what it is. That's the way Cadillac used to be, like especially through the 50s, the 60s with the big fin cars. They stood out. And despite the size of this car, Bruce, do you know by just offhand its dimensions? Because it's a large car.
It is, and unfortunately, they have not put dimensions out there.
Okay, it's a large car, but it is a specific 2+2. It has two seats in the front.
Because if you look at the back seat, I think it's a true 4-seater, but maybe I'm wrong.
Well, 2+2 is 4. Or am I completely wrong on my definition? I always thought a 2+2 was okay. You've got 2 seats in the front, 2 kind of smaller seats in the back.
But right? I don't think the seats in the back are smaller, is what I'm saying. And the reason I
see what you're saying there.
Yeah, the reason I say that is, first off, it's a 4-door vehicle. And secondly, another interesting thing is that it has a roof with 4 separate privacy zones. Mm-hmm. So each occupant can specify the amount of tint to the roof from 1 to 20%, depending on how much sunlight they want to get through. And also, again, they have that tablet in between them. And each rear seat has a tablet in front of it to do stuff with. So I don't get the impression this is a vehicle that's a coupe that you could put 2 people in. I think this is a true 4-seat coupe. But again, I don't have the dimensions. So I'm only saying that based on what I know.
My point being, for a car this size, you are only carrying 4 people at the absolute max. It's not designed with practicality in mind.
No,
right
it's
off the
2
bat.
seats up front, 2 seats in the back, and then tablets.
But that's not to say it doesn't have practical applications, because that lift back, I mean, there's a lot of storage back there. Obviously, the passengers are riding in exquisite comfort. Yeah, it's $300,000, probably more depending on how you outfit it.
Right.
But it's unlike anything else Cadillac has done. It is a very gutsy move. They're obviously not going to sell very many of these at all. But when you look at that rarefied air of other luxury vehicles, I mean, I don't know that you could ever really call it a bargain. But if you want something that's as striking as that is, and I know there'll be people that will not be happy with the design. I've heard a lot of criticism about, the rear, the way the taillights, the lighting elements are kind of offset with each other. You've got
I like it a lot personally.
You've got the lower, I mean, it's traditional Cadillac thin lights, right? You've got the lower set that comes down horizontal along the bottom and then vertical up the back. And then you have another set that's also narrow, thin. I mean, to me, that evokes the fin cars without actually having fins, right? I think that's what they were going for there. I mean, I just think it's a striking design all around. And if they can make their mark with this, I mean, when's the last time you saw a Cadillac that was just like, okay, this thing is just unlike anything else? I mean, not to say that, the CTS or the CT5, or the CT6,
they've never
they
gone
were
for this
right.
Rare. This is, it seems like they are trying to compete with Rolls-Royce or Bentley.
Yep.
Like that seems to be
absolutely.
And so I wanted a few other things I wanted to add about this is that Cadillac, I'm trying to think how to say this. So a lot of American automakers, and this kind of happened in the 70s and 80s, and it precipitated through the 90s. They decided that they were going to try to compete with the Germans by having even their luxury sedans be somewhat sporty. Mm-hmm. That, you think of, basically you think of the Cadillacs and Lincolns of the 60s and 70s, that they were these big, comfortable land yachts. And then in the 80s, you get things like the Lincoln LSC or other things that they're trying to compete with the Germans because those are sporty. And what I thought was really interesting about the Celestiq, I just did it.
Celestiq. You did it. Yep. Is the Celestiq is
that they kind of mention in the release that this is being tuned for on-road comfort. So it has adaptive air springs plus magnetic ride control 4.0 dampers. It's got a 5-link suspension front and rear. And it is the first Cadillac to have active roll control stabilizer bars. And for those not familiar, that's something that Bentley uses, and I think Rolls also uses. That it's essentially electric motor that acts with the anti-roll bars, so that when you're going through a corner, the vehicle doesn't roll. It keeps the body upright by using force to act against them. And so that means you are going to get a super pliant, super comfortable, super smooth ride, even through corners. And that's, I think, a welcome change, because, for so long, Cadillac, even kind of today, they tried to pursue that sports sedan market. And not that the CTSV, vehicles like that were bad. It's just, it never felt quite at home with a Cadillac. And it feels like they're going back to their roots and doing, okay, we're going to do an electric vehicle, which means it's going to be quieter. And we're going to have this super pliant suspension that lets you just like roll along the road and be comfortable. And yeah. Also, it has Ultra Cruise, which is GM's hands-free driver assistance system. So there's Super Cruise, which we mentioned earlier, and that does some things on some roads. Ultra Cruise is the next step from that, and that is a hands-free driving assistance system. So theoretically, you waft down the road, and at that point, who cares if you have 600 horsepower? Because if you're in the US, you're doing what, 85 ish. Maybe you're touching 90 to pass someone.
And again, I mean,
horsepower is plenty. That's all you need.
It's not slow by any means. And I know there will be the Tesla people that are like, well, I can have the Plaid that's luxurious and it's a lot faster.
Right. This thing does 60 in 3.8 seconds.
It doesn't matter. You don't
need to go faster than that.
It doesn't matter. I mean, I'm not on the Tesla hate train, but given the choice between a Plaid or this, I'm taking this because freaking look at it. I mean, the Model S has been around a while.
Yep.
It's not a bad car. It's not a bad looking car. I mean, I know I've heard all kinds of stories about quality, blah, blah, blah. That aside, the Celestiq just looks amazing. I'm glad you were talking about how Cadillac kind of shifted gears a little bit through the 90s, 2000s. I'll take that opportunity to toot my horn a little bit. I said a long time ago, long before my Motor One days, that Cadillac needs to stop chasing the Germans and just be Cadillac. And it starts by getting rid of the alphanumerics. That worked for Germany for years, for decades. That's how people got to know those vehicles.
That's the way it goes.
They still do it. But you also have Cadillac's brand equity with names like Seville and Eldorado. And I mean, yeah,
and even if they're not doing that, they are doing things like Lyric and Celeste. Like they are bringing actual names back.
They are bringing actual names back. They actually, because I asked them, I asked Cadillac about that. I think when I was on a media call for Escalade, asking, or maybe it was for Lyric, just asking, hey, are we going to see more names coming back to Cadillac instead of alphanumerics? And they said, unequivocally yes. And I think that's a smart move. So you have this big car that's not trying to be a performance beast, but it still has plenty of guts, with styling all its own, with a larger than life price tag, with a larger than life presence. If it is as luxurious as we're all hoping it's going to be, I think it's a gutsy move, but I think it could be a great move for Cadillac. Now we'll see how the world responds.
So let's now talk about the vehicle that debuted roughly 12 hours later.
12 hours later. Speaking of ultra luxurious.
It might even have been less than 12 hours, but it was certainly less than 24. I can guarantee that to you. And that is that Cadillac. I'm still on Cadillac. That's that Rolls-Royce gave us the initial production specs about the Spectre. Which is a good name. That's a good name.
It's a great name. I love it.
And that is their new upcoming electric coupe. So Cadillac, or I keep saying Cadillac, Rolls-Royce is also going electric. And so it's just fascinating that we have these two vehicles that ostensibly are kind of going to compete against each other. Once you get into the specs, especially, the specs are interesting.
Well, I mean, to be clear to everybody out there, we don't have final specs for the Spectre. Specs for the Spectre. Say that 10 times fast.
We have preliminary specs.
Preliminary specs for the Spectre.
Yes. And I'll just throw those out. 577 horsepower, 664 pound-feet of torque. So a little, if I'm not mistaken, a little less horsepower than the Cadillac, but a little more torque than the Cadillac. Range
still
is also,
right there, very comparable though, I think.
Oh yeah, definitely very comparable. Range is also lower. Rolls-Royce is projecting a 260-mile range. I didn't mention it before, but the Cadillac is projecting a 300-mile range. So, and also, it's a tad slower. Again, if you're buying a Rolls-Royce, I don't know why you're trying to be the fastest vehicle in the world. The Spectre will hit 60 in 4.4 seconds. And what did I say about the Cadillac? 3.8?
Yeah, I mean, those are fast numbers. In any universe, those are fast numbers.
And these are not vehicles that performance is what's trying to sell them. These are luxury vehicles, and luxury at not even like, a BMW 7 Series or a Mercedes S-Class. This is the next level beyond that.
And that's very, very important to note here, Bruce, because Rolls-Royce said specifically about the Spectre, this is not designed for performance. This is designed to just be a pure luxury vehicle. Now, what does that mean in Rolls-Royce speak? 22 LED lights in the grille, 4,796 lighted dots in the interior. That does not include the headliner, which of course Rolls-Royce has. It's famous for its star headliner. You now have the starlight doors. So, I mean, you just get in this thing at night and close the doors, and it's just like you're in a rolling planetarium, right?
Yeah.
It's riding on the
disco ball. Like I want to like sync them to like something like Donna Summer or something like that, and get in it and just have them pulsing.
What? Donna Summer in a Rolls-Royce Spectre, Bruce? I don't know if we can be friends or if maybe we should just be like best friends now. I don't know. That's a little confusing. But yeah, I mean, Rolls-Royce, this is a luxury vehicle. It's on the architecture of luxury platform. It's designed to just take you down the road in as near dead silence as you can get without feeling any bumps. It has the planar suspension,
which is their new setup that can decouple the anti-roll bars to allow each of them to act independently. So it's even, you know, magnetic ride control, decoupling anti-roll. Like, we're getting all of this tech to basically make the most, depending on the vehicle, Cadillac rolls, to get like the most comfortable ride imaginable, to just never feel a bump. You never feel a pebble, like nothing. Like, it's the exact opposite of a sports car where, you know, I remember people talking about, I can't remember, but you roll over a penny and you can tell what year it is. Like, this is the exact, you roll over a penny and you're like, there was nothing there.
No, you roll over somebody's house and it's like,
exactly.
What?
Yeah.
Was there a penny in the house? I have no idea. What house? What? Where are we at? This is also the most aerodynamic Rolls-Royce ever, 0.25 coefficient of drag. Yeah, okay, crickets there. Nobody cares about that. But I mean, it's an EV. They're trying to make it efficient. Bruce, what do you think about the 260-mile range, though? I mean, that does feel a little low for me. If you're just going to go for pure luxury, I would say, you know what, push as much into the battery as you can. And let this thing roll. Now, I mean, if we're going to go back to Tesla and Lucid, I would probably have one of those maybe over the Rolls.
No, because this goes back to the Cadillac thing. You're not buying this thing for range. It's not like anyone who this is not your daily driver, you know? I don't agree with that necessarily. I agree, but if you look at what Tesla or Lucid or, you know, companies like that are doing, 300 plus mile ranges are quickly becoming the norm, and we're kissing 400 quickly. That, you know, it's interesting that these big vehicles like this are not going there, but I don't know if it matters. Like,
I think it does. Even in this segment, I think it does, because is it somebody's daily driver? Probably not a daily driver, but it's also not going to be like just, you know, relegated to like a nice spirited drive once every month or two. I mean, that's there's going to be more use here. And when you start talking about using your vehicle, you want to use it, right? You don't want to pull over and spend time trying to charge it up. So I mean, that's why I think, maybe that's a little soft on the range for this. I don't know. We're still in preliminary area here with the Spectre.
Right. We should say all of those numbers were preliminary, but they were all released by Rolls-Royce. So I mean, must think there's something to those numbers otherwise they wouldn't have put them out.
Right. I mean, we don't have details on the battery. We don't have details on the motors, you know, how the power is getting to the ground. But I mean, I think it looks good. I mean, it looks like a Rolls-Royce.
It does. Yeah.
Their configurator is up, and you can get some pretty wild combinations going in their configurator. If you go over to motor1.com, you can see senior editor Jeff Perez couldn't resist diving in there and just trying to create the weirdest, craziest Rolls-Royce Spectre he could. And I mean, he assembled one that's just, I mean, like purple with white on the outside. I
saw that.
I prefer the blue. There's like a very white and kind of a light icy blue combo that I think this looks fantastic. So yeah, the configurator's up. Go play, have a good time.
I think it's time for us to stop talking about EVs that we can't afford and start talking about a combustion powered vehicle that we also can't afford but wish we could.
Well, it's closer. It's only a little
closer.
It's only a little bit more expensive than a GMC Sierra pickup truck, right?
Yeah, we're moving in the right direction here. And that is the new Porsche 911 Carrera T. This case stands for touring. And it seems really cool. Like, it seems like calling it like the budget. Well, no, it would be fair to call it a GT3 on a budget, or at least maybe a GTS on a budget. That, you know,
yeah, maybe GTS is a little bit better. I think GT3 might be a little extreme. I mean, to give people an understanding. Okay, so this is the 911 Carrera with your regular base 911 Carrera engine, which is what, 300 and
hold on, buddy. I'm pulling up photos. I will
369 horsepower, 379 horsepower. But you get
9 horsepower, 331 pound-feet of torque. Yeah,
that's the entry-level engine for the 911. But you get it with a bunch of standard driveline equipment that you can't get on the base Carrera, but you can get on the Carrera S, which has the upgraded engine. That includes the manual transmission, the Porsche active suspension management, their diff. What else? I'm just going off the top of my head. Because this is one that I actually read.
So yes, it comes with the 7-speed manual as standard, but the 8-speed PDK is a no-cost option.
Right.
Also, deletion of the rear seats is standard, but you can put them back in as a no-cost option.
Right.
It gets the mechanical rear or limited slip rear differential that is generally standard on the Carrera S, but this one gets it. You can't usually get that on the base model. What else? You get the Sport Chrono package, which is that cool thing where it's got the chronometer on the middle of the dashboard. You get a Sport exhaust. Rear axle steering is also an option, which you can't usually get on the Carrera. One of the interesting things is it has less sound insulation, thinner glass, and a more compact battery than you would usually get in this model. They said all told, if you get the 7-speed, it weighs about 100 pounds less than a base 911 Carrera. So you're definitely getting that sort of GTS, a little bit of GT3 vibe where, you know, you're going to feel things a little bit more in this car. It's going to be a little more visceral. Obviously, having the manual transmission, purists are rejoicing for that. But you don't have to have it again. Like you can,
you don't have to have it.
Yeah, you could have this vehicle with the PDK, but still have no rear seat, still have less sound insulation, still have the thinner glass. I'm still of an age that 379 horsepower seems like plenty to me. Yeah, I know a new Nissan Z has 400, but this
we're still talking about 0 to 60, I think, in just under 4 seconds. Come on.
Yeah, exactly.
Just under 4 seconds. I mean, this is a relatively light car, considering we've just been talking about electric vehicles that are probably upwards of maybe 3 tons. I don't know. We don't have the specifics there yet.
Those numbers,
but EVs with their battery packs, they're heavier. I mean, this is just kind of a stripped down 911 with
this is the purest 911
with some good fun equipment. And yeah, I mean, price wise, it checks in just a little bit under the Carrera S, where you get more power.
It's $118,050, and that's after the destination fee. So yeah, $118,000 is a hell of a lot of money for a car. I'm not even going to begin to debate that. But this is kind of but I think you're right. The 911 GTS is the best comparison point for this, because that takes the Carrera S and it adds a bunch of stuff. The GTS kind of sits between the Carrera S and the GT3. This sits between the very base model and the Carrera S. And if you did the pricing post, so I would need to look it up. It's only about $6,000 or $8,000 more than a base 911. Am I wrong there?
11,000 more.
Okay. I guess if you're already spending 11,000 more,
But I mean, it's got the upgrade. It's got. Here's what's interesting, because we rip on Porsche a lot for their options, right? Mm-hmm. You go in to the Porsche configurator. You start with a 911, and then you start going through the options, and boy, do they have options! And it's like by the time you blink and get everything you want, it's like you've spent an extra 50 or 60 grand just in options. The 911T is a case where I think, okay, it starts at 118,050. I don't know that you really need to add anything to it. I mean, if you want to go in and change like seatbelt colors, I suppose you could. But with the Porsche active suspension management, it gives you the little bit of the suspension drop with the sport chrono package. All of these things already plugged in.
That's already standard. Like you just get that.
Just get it and go, man.
Right.
Just get it and go. Where, I mean, if you wanted to try to option up just a base 911 Carrera, well, first of all, you're not going to be able to get some of these options on that base Carrera.
Right. You can't get the manual.
You can't have the manual at all.
You can't get the differential. You just can't get that stuff. So you might as well just spend a little bit of extra. By the time you're spending 100 grand plus, spend 118 and just get all the good stuff and you're done. Mm-hmm. But that's just me talking. But yeah,
no, I think the 911, I think the Carrera T, I mean, it's just a more visceral Porsche for me. I mean, obviously a 911 GT3 is extremely visceral, but if you can't afford that kind of cost, I mean,
and this is Bruce, going to be more friendly on the road. That a 911 or a 911 GT3 is just gonna just beat the hell out of you because of how hard the suspension is. Whereas this is still tuned that you can drive it, it can handle a little bump or two.
Right. And Bruce, I mean, you and I live in a different world from the buyers here that we're talking about and catering to, or Porsche is catering to. But there is a world where somebody can look and think, okay, I could probably swing something 100 to 120, but I just can't really get up to 140, 150.
Right.
So
totally.
I mean, there you go. Yeah. Porsche 911 Carrera T.
Or here's the secret. You wait for them to get on the used market and then wait a couple of years, pick up something like this that's when the good times happen, when stuff starts depreciating. But we're running out of time. We kind of got to go quick here, but let's talk about a car you and I can afford. I know you and I can afford one of these.
Okay, let's talk about this one really quick, but then we have some emails that we have to get through.
Okay, let's do that. That sounds totally fair because we did get some good emails. Do you want to actually do emails first, and then we'll do?
Do you want to do emails right now? Let's do some emails right now.
Sure, man.
Folks, we said, you know what? We're not getting enough emails, so email us. Where, Bruce?
Let's do that first. I like that. What's at motor1.com.
Podcast at motor1.com?
Yeah.
Podcast at motor1. You were supposed to respond. Okay, we didn't.
I'm sorry.
We didn't rehearse that, ladies and gentlemen. Podcast at motor1.com. Email us. Of course, you can always leave comments on our YouTube articles, or I'm sorry, on our YouTube page, Motor1 Podcast. You can leave comments on our articles that go up every Friday at motor1.com. The emails, hey, we love the comments. We're going to focus on emails today because we get a little more context here, I think, in the emails sometimes. And we have a little ways.
We got one that just makes me feel really, really nice. I assume you're going to read that one.
We'll get to that one. I'm going to jump back here to October 12th because we didn't have a chance to do anything last week with our special Knight Rider episode. That thank you guys. AJ from Knight Rider Historians, Joe, I know you didn't have a chance to be on, but we appreciate everything you guys are doing in the Knight Rider community. We love that podcast. Had a lot of great feedback on it. They have to be back on. But
help me out. Are we looking at Lee or Lloyd?
I'm going back to Lloyd here. Lloyd sent us an email on October 12th. And if you remember from a previous episode, we were talking about cars that we would like to electrify, or vehicles that might be, current existing internal combustion vehicles that might make a good platform to do an electric motor swap. And of course, I was trolling everybody a little bit and saying, well, I'd want to do that to a Dodge Demon just because, Hemi. So Lloyd, we asked people, hey, what cars would you like to electrify? Lloyd sent this in, and I think this is a very, very, very good choice. Lloyd says,
I agree.
I don't know why, but the car that immediately came to mind for a Frankenstein-esque EV transplant is the Pontiac Fiero GT with a V6. That is an outstanding EV swap. Maybe because it's a small, lightweight, rear-drive, mid-engine platform. It worked for Tesla. Yeah, you can't, the original Tesla Roadster, that was a Lotus, right? It worked for Tesla with their concept, testing Lotus retrofit. So maybe it would work with the Fiero as well. Putting the weight of a battery pack and electric motor near the rear wheels seems ideal. As somebody that's driven a Fiero, I can't believe that never even crossed my mind. Because the V6s, they didn't have a lot of power, but it was a small car, and it was,
and they look really good.
They look really good, especially the 87, 88 style where they kind of where they had a little bit of the rear facelift. They looked good. I know there are a lot of people right now that even do LS swaps. Supercharged 3800 V6 swaps have been pretty common in those cars, where if you just do a straight swap with it, like a supercharged 3800, like from a Grand Prix or an older Buick Regal, that's 240 horsepower just on the swap alone. You start doing pulleys and other things. 300 horse and a little Fiero is crazy fun. And I know you're thinking, well, Fast and Furious put rocket boosters on one. Well, that's fake, people. That's Hollywood. That's not real life. An electrified Fiero could be epic. So thank you, cool, Lloyd, for sending that in. Bruce, do you got an email ready to go? So I can jump over.
No. So I referenced Lee, I'm just gonna answer your second question if you're listening. So here's a quick note to say I've been busy but catching up on the podcast. Keep up the great work as always. You guys are a great blend of knowledge and good discussion. So Lee, you sent 2 questions. I'm gonna read the second one. You were thinking through battery swapping into existing internal combustion vehicles. It reminded me of a related question. What do you think happens to a vehicle of something like an 80s Jag when it goes battery electric? Or more generally, when does the decision to make sure all of the numbers match actually matter? And Smith, I think your example was perfect. I don't know that there is anyone out there that cares about a numbers matching Fiero. And so there will be, but maybe but like, it doesn't bother me.
It's not like a numbers matching Demon where they only made so many of them.
Exactly.
Right?
It's not a limited production, or, it's not super, this word's loaded, but special vehicle. It's nothing like that. So I don't mind it. It would be something completely different if you took a Ferrari 250 GTO and pulled out the V12 and put it on. Man, no, what did you do? That
should have been mine. That should have been my choice over the Demon. No,
but
no. Don't send me any hate mail. I don't want to electric swap a 250 GTO. Just for the record.
Would you electric swap a show?
Yes.
Okay.
Yeah, okay. I wouldn't have any problem electric swapping a show. That show V6 engine is fantastic.
Totally.
But do you know how many Tauruses are out there?
Exactly.
The Taurus show, it's rare in the grand scheme of the Taurus market, but we're still talking I think maybe close to 100,000 all total for the V6 run.
Okay, yeah. So yeah,
I could be a little off on that. I know 93. I think there was like something like 25 or 30,000 just in 93 alone. So 100,000 might be a little sweat. Anyways, not the point.
But no, I think that's where I kind of get into. If it's a vehicle that is so special that you're kind of, I can't think of a good way to say it, that you are taking one off the road and there aren't that many there. Mm-hmm. That then I would start to feel bad. But something like the Fiero or something like a Jaguar XJS or something, like there are certain vehicals where I'm not going
to let you electrify any Jaguar XJS.
Well, I'm not going to do it myself anyway, so we don't have to worry about the real world here.
I have an irrational love for that car and that V12.
I like it too. I just don't like the V12. You got another one, or do you want me to go?
Let's. I've got Leland's email here.
Oh God!
Did you want to read that, or do you want?
No, it's your turn. Go for it. But Leland, I just want to say first, thank you. That was the nicest email I've read in ages.
It really was, and it made me feel really good because this is part of the reason why I like to do rambling about cars.
Totally.
Bruce, I suspect you feel the same way. So this we got this just a couple days ago in a follow-up to last week's Knight Rider episode. And Leland writes, "Hi guys, quick thanks for a great episode on everyone's favorite Trans Am, plus associated tractor trailer and everything else too. Yes, Knight Rider historians, they have screen used kits. They track down the screen used GMC General Semi. They track down the screen used trailer. They are restoring those. Go over to KnightRiderHistorians.com. You can see Knight Rider Historians official on YouTube, where you can see everything that they have going on. We had AJ on last week. Great show. Mm-hmm. Back to the email. Leland says, it inspired me to search out the old episodes and start them anew. This time, it's going to get better. It inspired me to search out the old episodes and start them anew. This time with my 10-year-old son. He's hooked. I probably am too. I'm sure there's an old man ranting here about why can't they make any good TV anymore? But I'll let it go. Keep on rambling, Leland. Leland, man, you made our day. You made our day. And we talked a little bit last week about just the effect that Knight Rider had on a lot of car people. And here we are, 2022, 10-year-old son hooked on this 40-year-old show. And
that's the perfect age to watch that show, though, because you're just old enough to understand that things can be cheesy and bad, but you can still appreciate it unironically. Because that's about the age I started watching Mystery Science Theater 3000 and understood these are bad movies, but it's still okay to like them.
For sure. Leland, thank you for your email. Thanks everybody that's sending emails. Thanks everybody who's been commenting on YouTube as well. I don't think we're going to have time to get to YouTube comments this week. We'll get to them soon, possibly next week or the week after. Will be
next week because we've got some. We'll talk about that later, but it's not going to be next week. Maybe
we can talk about that later. But let's get back to talking about some of these debuts here. I know we're getting a little bit short on time. What are we covering here next, Bruce? We're going back to
a car. I mentioned a car you and I can both afford.
Yes.
That is the 2024 Chevrolet Trax. It debuted. It is much, much bigger than the current one. In fact, the Trax is now larger than the Trailblazer, but is still less expensive than the Trailblazer.
I'm gonna preface this. I know you're gonna talk about it more because you wrote it up, and I know a little bit about it. You know a lot more, but I'm just gonna preface this. I'm gonna set everybody up by saying, I think this is gonna be a big, big deal for Chevrolet. I think this new Trax. I think this new Trax is gonna be a big deal. Yeah. So tell us about it here.
So and it starts at $21,495. And if you're a frequent listener to the show, we've talked about average transaction prices for vehicles are well into the 30s, sometimes into the low 40s. So this is a new car you can buy for borderline half of that, depending on how things go. That's it. This is the entry level Chevrolet. This is the new Trax, like I said. And so it shares portions of the platform with the Trailblazer. They were very cagey. I did the media roundtable for this. They never quite wanted to say that it's the same platform, but portions of it are the same. And it is now larger than the Trailblazer, but it is less expensive. And the reason that they make that work is that, with this, you get a 1.2 liter turbocharged inline 3-cylinder that makes 137 horsepower, 162 pound-feet of torque. That runs through a 6-speed automatic, and you can only get it driving the front wheels. The thing is that the Trailblazer you can get with all-wheel drive, and Chevy said during their presentation, they're expecting the average buyer to spend about $5,000 more on a Trailblazer than they would on a Trax. And that's how they're kind of differentiating those two vehicles. Trailblazer is now going to be more for someone who really wants that all-wheel drive, maybe wants some of the extra bells and whistles, whereas Trax is kind of the entry level, but like I said, it's still a bigger vehicle. And even the two top levels of the Trax are $24,995. That's for the 2RS and the active trims. So even that just seems so cheap for a new car these days. All of them use that exact same powertrain, the 1.2 liter. Yeah, it's
here's my take. Does it have a fairly low power engine? Well, yeah. It's front wheel drive.
137 horsepower it's on the lower side. It's actually less powerful than the current model. The current model has a 1.4 liter turbo that makes 155 horsepower. But this was a very interesting thing during the media roundtable. They're claiming it is a second faster to 60. It will now go. It'll hit 60 in about 8.6 seconds versus 9.6 for the
I mean this isn't a performance vehicle though.
No.
I think it looks tremendously better than it did.
Oh God, yeah.
It looks like a rather mature vehicle in the photos. And you think of an entry-level machine, I'm not picturing something like this. So the fact that it looks so much better, one, it's a little bit larger, that's going to be more practical for a lot of people trying to shop in this lower price point. And I'm going to go on a little bit of a soapbox here. Unless you live somewhere where you are having to drive through 2 feet of snow in mountains constantly, forget all-wheel drive. Front-wheel drive on this with a good set of snow tires will take you just about anywhere you need to go. And you know what? I'll gladly skip the all-wheel drive portion to save a little bit of money. I'll drive this that looks good, that I feel good being in. Now, of course, I haven't actually driven this yet, so I'm prefacing all of this by saying, well, hopefully the interior doesn't feel completely low rent. Hopefully the engine doesn't just buzz the fillings out of your teeth when you're trying to drive it. But I mean, based on what I see here at this price point, I really think Chevrolet, they'll capture a lot of buyers with this.
Right. And so I wanted to mention that you were talking about interior quality. Granted, I have also not sat in this vehicle, but I can tell people what it's going to be available with. The LS and the 1RS are going to have an 8-inch diagonal infotainment screen, though LT, 2RS, and Active will get an 11-inch diagonal, again, infotainment screen. And then you can also see this digital instrument cluster in these images. And I was just sitting here thinking, like, I know you owned one. I, knew people with one. You think about like the old Chevy Metro, or, the Aveo, or like not the Spark. What was the entry?
The Metro, the Chevy Aveo.
Anyway, but you think about entry-level Chevrolets of old. And this looks so much better on the inside. This looks,
oh yeah.
It has, I can't speak to the fit and finish, but at least in terms of design, it has a cohesive design that looks good, that looks like something someone would actually want, that you could imagine yourself being in a dealer and sit in this and not feel like, oh, I'm losing out for not getting the more expensive vehicle, for not getting a Trailblazer,
right?
Or something like that. You can sit in this and be like, this is nice.
You feel like you're not having to compromise.
Right.
That's how I would sum it up, because I've new vehicle shopped many times. In fact, listeners, my Mazda 6 is gone. I don't know if I mentioned that last week, but the Mazda is gone. So once I finish this move, I will be buying something new. So I'm sort of in that market right now. I'm in that mind space where, okay, I know how much I want to spend and I know what I would like. Where am I going to have to compromise? And just on the onset, I feel like this could be a vehicle that you could get where you don't really feel like you're having to compromise. I mean, are you going to go and get like, Ultra Cruise with a bazillion surround cameras? And no.
Right.
No, it's not that big of a concern to me. And I think there are a lot of people out there right now shopping, thinking the same way that I am, where, okay, it would suck if you go into this and it's like, okay, here are all of these nice features. I live in a cold climate. I wouldn't mind heated seats. Okay, well, the only way to get heated seats is if you get like the $8,000 option, but that kind of stinks. But just, I mean, from looks, from the way it looks, and from the size, from the improvements there, I think this is going to be a very important vehicle for them.
Right. So the higher level trims, like I would. The higher level trims, I'm not sure exactly which ones, but your 2RSs, certainly your actives, those are the 2 top level ones. They have things like heated seats, like you mentioned. They have remote start. They have wireless phone charging, which a lot of automakers are still charging for as an option. But if you get that, if you get one of those trims, you get that feature. Automatic climate control. All models across the entire range have active noise cancellation from bottom to the top. So it doesn't feel like they're trying to treat this as like a penalty to buyers, or like it actually feels like this is something someone would want to buy if this was their price range. And you could look at this and then look at a used car, and you and I know how much used cars have increased in price in the last, just since basically 2020.
Yep.
There are a lot of used cars that for $25,000 aren't going to have the features that this does. And so it would be easy to say, oh, I could get a used car for this amount of money, or I could get this, which, okay, the 137 horsepower, that's not a lot, but it's more than the Mini I have now. It'll get you around. It's just not a sports car. And, this is going to be decent transportation with a lot of good features. And so I really think, this could do well. The all-wheel drive thing, you and I disagree with back and forth. You're right. The issue always comes down to, then you have to buy a set of snow tires. You have to have a place to keep them. That's a concern. But hell, I own a front-wheel drive car now. I grew up with front and rear-wheel drive cars. I grew up in northeastern and northwestern Ohio, and it was never an issue. So you can make it work. Unless you live in the Arctic, like the little Arctic, you're going to be fine.
Well, I'm not denying that all-wheel drive doesn't give you some benefits with traction. Certainly does, at least with accelerating. It might actually hurt you trying to slow down and turn because you're generally dealing with extra weight there.
Absolutely.
Yeah, I mean, it all comes down to the tires. The lack of all-wheel drive doesn't faze me on that one bit. If you do want all-wheel drive, I mean, you step up to the Trailblazer. And you know what? If they offered all-wheel drive on the Trax, it's probably going to be pretty close in price to a Trailblazer.
They'd have to mark it up, probably $2,000, $2,500, and at that point, you're at a Trailblazer. So that's
Nope, I think that's going to be a really good vehicle. And you look at the comments from our debut article at motor1.com. The comments are really mixed on it. Some people are just, oh, no all-wheel drive. Oh, that's weak. And it's just like, other people are like, well, like we just said, okay, if you want that, you just get the Trailblazer. So it's a very interesting mix. Oftentimes with just entry-level vehicles, we see just a lot of hate. So I actually take that as an encouraging sign.
So, Smith, we're at 1 hour and 7 minutes right now. Do we want to do one more vehicle, or should we promote the show for next week, and then kind of call it a night? I'll leave it up to you.
How about we pick one vehicle to do briefly?
Okay.
And just to give folks an idea, I mean, we didn't talk about anything new last week because we had the wonderful Knight Rider episode, but
that was fantastic.
We had the Mercedes EQE, we had the Honda Prologue, we had BMW M2, Polestar 3, a lot of vehicles. You want to go to motor1.com and read up on these debuts. We're not going to be able to cover them all. I would say let's talk about Honda Prologue.
Okay. Okey-doke,
because I think of all the vehicles we just mentioned, I think that has the potential to be of most interest, practically speaking, to our listeners. I don't know how many of you ramblers out there are going to go get a new Mercedes EQE SUV, but you might get
a $70,000 M2,
an M2, but you might get a Honda Prologue. Now, I'm bringing this with a caveat in that there's a lot that we don't know about it. It's made its, I guess, exterior debut. We've seen the interior. We don't have information really on the powertrain, but this is our first look at Honda's, their small electric SUV.
And we need to say this rides on General Motors Ultium platform and uses Ultium batteries.
There's, as I understand it, there's a lot of relation to the Blazer and the Cadillac Lyriq. So I guess, it's not really super small. It's a little bit above the CRV. Right. But it's their all electric. It's their all electric SUV.
Right. The wheelbase is 121.8 inches. And if you're curious, that is identical to the Cadillac Lyriq and Chevrolet Blazer EV. So,
and it also has a
pretty good idea of what's
it also has 6 lug wheels, which I think you also get on the Blazer and Lyriq, if I'm not mistaken. So yeah, lots of connection here with the Ultium. We've talked a lot about the Ultium today, haven't we, Bruce?
We have. It happens. It's just gone that way.
So that, like I said, we don't have information on the power, but it's worth discussing, one, because it's a Honda SUV, and we know Honda SUVs are among the best-selling SUVs in the United States.
CRV sells very well. Pilot sells very well. HRV, Passport, yeah.
Now, inside, you have 2 large screens. There's an 11-inch instrument cluster, 11.3-inch center screen. Outside, Honda says they call this a neo-rugged design, and I'm not really sure. I'm not really sure what that means, because I don't really see anything rugged. If you're not over on YouTube, Motor One Podcast on YouTube, you should go there, or at least go to motor1.com so you can see what we're talking about. I'll try to describe the exterior.
The back looks like a Jeep.
Well, I'll just say it. It's boring. To me, it's boring. To me, it just looks like a very just kind of, oh, okay, here's an SUV. Here, it's got a thin grille up front, thin headlights. But I don't think it's supposed to be super dramatic. This is a Honda SUV. It's not, it's not ugly. No. I'd say it's handsome. There's just not anything that really stands out about it. I think the interior looks pretty nice. The instrument cluster, digital instrument cluster, seems like it's placed just a little awkward in its shape. But
so I want to raise a point just about Honda EVs in general, because I've been talking about this with our colleague Dominic Yoni, who works for Inside EVs and is the host of the Inside EVs podcast. And I recommend, if you are into electric cars, checking that out. But he and I have been talking a lot about Honda's EV strategy just in our chat recently, and it's fascinating is the reason why we've been talking about it. So we've got the Prologue, which is arriving in 2024. And like we said, that rides on the GM Ultium platform and uses those batteries. And the fact that it has the same wheelbase as the Lyriq and Blazer EV at least suggests it's going to share a lot with those vehicles. So that's one thing. But if you're keeping an eye on automotive news, just last week, Honda announced a $3.3 billion factory in Ohio with LG Energy Solutions to build batteries just south of Columbus. In addition to that, they're also going to be making upgrades to their factories that are just north of Columbus in Marysville. And those batteries are going to be exclusive for Honda and Acura vehicles that are going to ride on the Honda E architecture, which is Honda's bespoke, only Honda's going to use an electric vehicle architecture. Okay, so we're up to 2 now. Also, Honda and GM are working on their own separate electric vehicle architecture. This has, as far as we know, and we don't know for certain right now, this is separate from Ultium. Maybe it's a fork off from Ultium. We don't quite know, but the first vehicle on that platform is arriving in 2027. Also, we're up to number 4 now. So Honda and Sony just announced their joint venture, Sony Honda Mobility, where Sony is going to develop vehicles and Honda is going to build them in the United States. And those are also going to be EVs. So Honda has essentially decided we got 3-ish partnerships and 1 we're doing on our own. And all of those vehicles are going to be available before the end of this decade. And I have no idea how they decided to end up with that strategy. And I'm fascinated to see where it goes.
It's a very, very interesting strategy for sure. I had forgotten about the Sony thing. I'm glad you brought that back up.
Well, it only came 2 days the announcement of building them in the US and stuff like that only came 2 days after the LG announcement. It's like it almost seemed like the two hands of the company weren't talking to each other, that they made
that never
massive
happens.
EV announcements within days of each other.
That never happens, but it all kind of starts here, doesn't it? With Prologue.
Right. This is the first one. This is the first one that's going to be on sale and on the road. The Prologue, as appropriately, is going to be the beginning, and then we just have to see where things go from there.
And I mean, as far as efforts go, like I said, it's not dramatic, but I don't think it's supposed to be dramatic. I'm very interested to hear more about it as far as, the stats, the price, and all that stuff. And of course, we'll bring that all to you at motor1.com. And we'll probably end up talking about it here on the podcast because Honda is a big deal.
Oh, yeah. So if you're watching on YouTube real quick, I threw up the story here. Sony Honda Mobility, their first model. It's going to be available in 2026, but we're going to see a preview of it at CES this January 2023. So that suggests it's decently well along if they already have a preview, and then from there, it's going to be on sale within 3 years. Mm-hmm. So interesting times.
Lots happening. Bruce, why don't you tell all of the ramblers out there what's going to happen while I'm gone for 2 weeks? Because I'm a little bit upset.
I got a couple of things to talk about here. So first off, next week, if you remember last year, if you're a longtime listener, Motor One, we have our Star Awards. The second annual Star Awards will be taking place. Our guys will go out and be driving those cars next month, and then they will figure out the winners, and then we'll eventually announce them and things like that. We will be doing a preview next week. So Smith will not be with us. As we've said, this is his last week broadcasting from South Dakota. I will have at minimum one editor. I'm hoping for as many as 3. I would love to get 3 of our guys on next week. But we'll wait and see how that goes.
That'll be a good show.
We will be talking about all. We know all the candidates already. They're all the candidate vehicles, I should say. So we will be talking about all those vehicles and the different classes they're going to be competing in, and the awards they're going to be up for, and things like that. So just kind of hyping that up. And then 2 weeks from now, I'm flying by the seat of my pants here. I don't have a guest yet. And I gotta find one, and it could be as interesting as Smith and I have joked about, or there was one other time where things were up in the air, and I joked like, fine, I'll just have my wife on, or I'll just have my dad on, or who knows what's going to happen. So 2 weeks from now, it's going to be a fun show because I'm not exactly sure what I'm going to do that week. But the week of November 9th, I have got a favor to ask from our listeners and, and our watchers. Right now, we are at 387 subscribers on YouTube. I would love to give Smith a housewarming gift of hitting 400. That's 13 people. Like, I'm not asking for a lot here. So if you are a frequent listener and you've never bothered to subscribe on YouTube, click that subscribe button. I would super appreciate it. If you listen to this show and you've really liked us and you think, a friend, a family member, or whatever might like us, suggest it to them, suggest they subscribe. I want to give Smith 400 subscribers for his new house. So let's try to do that. We've got 2 weeks. It's not like, I'm saying let's do it tomorrow. We got 2 weeks to get there. Let's see what we can do.
Well, that would be a nice housewarming gift. I would really appreciate that, Ramblers. And you know what? If you can get it up to 500, if you can get it up,
promise, man.
If you can get it up to 500, email podcast@motor1.com. Let Bruce know what I will have to do then when I am back on after my 1,200-mile move in my new office that will hopefully be mostly set up by then. Email podcast@motor1.com. Tell Bruce what I should do.
If
and
we
it's
there,
and as long as
really
it's
embarrassing, because
as long as it's
I'm only
legal,
asking for 13 of you. If 113 of you show up, then Smith.
As long as it's
watch, folks.
As long as it's legal and at least PG-13, I have no shame.
Okay, doke.
I have no shame. But thank you, Bruce, for that. And yes, thank you, Ramblers. I've been in South Dakota since 2014, and I am returning to Northern Michigan, actually buying the house that I not really grew up in, but moved to when I was a teenager. So a homecoming in certain ways. And perhaps more importantly, there's a big garage outside that already has my project car in it. So I'll finally be in the same state as my project car.
That's good. It's only been a few months. You finally got there.
I finally got there. So folks, email us podcast@motor1.com, comment on our YouTube articles, on our YouTube page, Motor One Podcasts, on the videos that go up every Friday. Comment on the article that goes up at motor1.com every Friday. I am signing off from South Dakota. Bruce, take us home.
All right, man. We will see you in 2 weeks. And until then, good afternoon, good evening, or good night. And we're going to miss you. Next week, it's going to be Star Wars. 2 weeks from now, it's going to be a fun one. I'll obviously plan. It's not like I'm going to show up that night and not know what to do, but I'm going to try to think of something fun, since this will be, I think, the second episode I've done without you by that time, I think we'll be at episode 96, if I'm not mistaken. So you've only missed 2 in 96, so I can't get too mad at you, can I?
You haven't missed any.
I've not missed one yet.
Not missed a single one. In my defense, I missed that one because I followed some stupid YouTuber's advice on how to make like the best bacon beef wrapped hot dog ever.
Oh, Jesus. No wonder you got sick.
And I don't think it was cooked all the way through, and it was really gross. So top tip, don't get your cooking advice from YouTube channels.
Okie doke. All right. But I will be back with you next week. Smith will be back with you in November. And hopefully at that time, I will be able to present him with a big, shiny 400 number of subscribers and maybe even more. So bye-bye, everybody. We will talk to you later.
Bye-bye.